Hello and welcome. In any business, you've got different groups who all want different things. You've got employees, managers, customers, suppliers, and, well, when those wants clash, you get friction. So today, we're going to build your toolkit for resolving stakeholder conflict, that friction that's just bound to happen, and can either break a business or, believe it or not, make it stronger. Let's dive in.
So, think about this classic dilemma for a second. Your employees want a pay raise for all their hard work, which, makes perfect sense. But at the same time, management has to keep costs down to stay competitive. It really feels like a zero-sum game, doesn't it? This is exactly the kind of puzzle businesses are trying to solve every single day. So, how do they actually do it?
Well, this natural tension, this friction between different groups, it actually has a name. It's called stakeholder conflict, and really understanding what it is, that's the very first step toward managing it like a pro.
Okay, so at its core, stakeholder conflict is what happens when what one group wants is the polar opposite of what another group can or is willing to offer. That employee wage example is just perfect. Higher wages for employees automatically mean higher costs for the employer. It's a fundamental clash of interests, plain and simple.
But before we jump into all the formal methods for solving these big problems, we've got to lay some groundwork. I mean, you can't solve anything if you can't even have a productive conversation, right? So before you call in the lawyers or mediators, any effective resolution begins with some simple but really powerful ground rules for just talking to each other.
This six-step process is the absolute foundation. It all starts with listening, and I mean truly hearing the other side without planning your comeback. That alone creates a space for openness, where people feel safe enough to be honest. Next, you clarify what you've heard, just to make sure there are no misunderstandings. Then you focus on the actual topic. After that, you summarize their points to show you're on the same page. And only then, once all that is done, do you reflect by calmly sharing your side. Honestly, just following this can put out a lot of fires before they even start.
Okay, but what happens when a simple chat just isn't cutting it? That's when you need to pull out a more formal approach. We're going to look at a four-part toolkit for resolving conflict, and we'll start with the most direct method, where the two parties try to sort it out themselves.
First up in our toolkit is negotiation. This is exactly what it sounds like. The conflicting parties sit down face-to-face and try to hammer out a deal. There's no referee, no judge. The power to find a solution is 100% in their hands through good old-fashioned discussion and bargaining.
And the process itself is powerful because it's so simple. First, you clearly state what you want. Second, you really listen to what they want, to understand where they're coming from. And third, you work together to reach a compromise. And that's the magic word right there, compromise. It's pretty rare that one side gets everything they want, but the real goal is to find a solution that both sides can live with. And this is a perfect real-world example. Ryanair's management and its pilots had a massive disagreement over pay and their working conditions. So what did they do? They entered into direct negotiations. And by doing that, they were able to find enough common ground to prevent a strike that would have been crippling for the airline. That's the power of negotiation in action.
So what happens when you're at a stalemate, when you just can't agree on your own? Well, when negotiations break down, it might be time to bring in a neutral third party, basically a referee, to help everyone find a way forward. Let's see how that works.
The first level of outside help is called conciliation. This is where a neutral outsider joins the conversation. Their whole job is to help things along and even make suggestions for a possible compromise. But, and this is super important, their suggestions are not binding. Nobody is forced to accept them, which makes it a pretty low-risk way to get an expert's opinion into the room. A great example of this is Ireland's Workplace Relations Commission, the WRC. They often act as conciliators in big disputes between employers and unions. They'll listen to both sides and propose solutions to kind of guide them toward an agreement, but the final decision to say yes or no still rests entirely with the parties themselves. Okay, next up in our toolkit is mediation. Now, this sounds a lot like conciliation, but there's a really crucial difference. A mediator also helps the conversation along, but their job is not to offer solutions or suggestions. Instead, they act as a skilled go-between, helping the two sides communicate better so they can discover their own solution together. Think about a family business where siblings are just not seeing eye to eye on where the company should go next. Emotions can run really high. A mediator steps in to provide a safe, structured place for them to talk it all out, guiding the conversation so they can reach an agreement, without the mediator ever telling them what to do. It's perfect for situations where keeping the relationship intact is just as important as the business decision. All right, this slide is where it all clicks into place. Just look at the key differences.
With negotiation, there's no third party. With conciliation and mediation, there is, but the parties themselves still hold all the power to decide. And that brings us to our final and most formal tool in the kit, arbitration, where that power to decide gets handed over completely.
Arbitration is basically the final stop. Here, both sides agree to hand over the decision-making power to a neutral third party, who we call the arbitrator. Each side presents their case, kind of like in a courtroom, and the arbitrator makes a final call. And in most cases, that ruling is legally binding. The argument is officially over.
For instance, the labor court in Ireland often plays the role of an arbitrator. When it makes a ruling in a major industrial dispute, that's it, it's final. Both the employer and the union have to follow it. It provides a definitive end to a conflict when the parties just can't find one on their own.
So we've got this awesome toolkit, but why does mastering it actually matter? Because, resolving conflict isn't just about putting out fires. It's a core part of building a business that's resilient, ethical, and innovative. It's really about smart strategy.
I mean, from an ethical point of view, how you handle disagreements says everything about your company's values. Building relationships based on trust and fairness isn't just good PR. It's what ensures you'll be around for the long haul, because you're respecting everyone involved, from your employees all the way out to the wider community.
And if you're an entrepreneur, this is an absolutely critical skill. Starting a business is just a constant balancing act, trying to meet the needs of your investors, your customers, and your team, all at once. Being a skilled negotiator and a creative problem solver is what lets a startup navigate all those challenges and actually grow.
And finally, we can't ignore how technology is changing the game. Remember Ryanair using negotiation to avoid that strike? Well, think about their app. By giving customers instant updates on flight changes, it's actually a form of proactive conflict prevention. It improves communication, lowers frustration, and ultimately builds a better relationship.
So I'll leave you with this one thought. We tend to see conflict as this purely negative thing, a problem that we just need to make go away. But what if it's actually an opportunity? An opportunity to listen, to innovate, and to build stronger, more transparent relationships than you had before. Maybe the goal isn't to avoid conflict, but to get really, really good at resolving it. Thanks so much for tuning in.